Greetings, my name is Andreas Dewanto, and I'm a lecturer in School of Mathematics and Science, Singapore Polytechnic. Today, I'll be presenting on students' perspective on a long-term home-based learning. So this was a study which is conducted in April 2020 when Singapore went into the so-called circuit breaker period, and because of that, all lessons have to be conducted online. So this will be the flow of my presentation. I will start with the introduction, where I will share my motivation, what other people have done, and what eventually I try to achieve from this study. Then I will go through the methodology, and I will talk about the result. The methodology involves some surveys. I'll be talking about the result from those survey, and I will conclude the presentation with my own reflections of this whole project and this whole experience of home-based learning. So in April 2020, Singapore entered the circuit breaker period. In some other country, they call it a lockdown period, and that's not just unique to Singapore because at the time suddenly there's this surge of COVID-19 cases. So many countries actually went into lockdown, including Singapore. But because of that, what happens is all teaching and learning activities in all level of educational institution, that means all from kindergarten all the way to university and polytechnic, have to be conducted online. Now, this present challenges and to certain extent stress to both, staff and student alike. To be honest, home-based learning or online learning is not something totally new because since our experience with SARS in 2003, home-based learning has been part of the regular exercise in order to get us prepared to face exactly this sort of situation. Nonetheless, it was still challenges. It still faces challenges to us because not only just we have to suddenly move into online learning, but at the same time we also have to adjust to the new normal of working from home, studying from home, and also all sort of safety measure that that can be implemented by the government. And we have to learn new technology. We need to learn this Microsoft Teams, will be used to facilitate the online learning in Singapore Polytechnic. And what happened is that this is an unprecedented situation. When we entered the circuit breaker, we had no idea whether this will last for weeks or for months or could be years. So to a certain extent, we face all these things in mind when we enter the period. So the study of students' challenges or stress during this period was not something new. Other people should have done this study. So, for example, this Margaret Roth has talked about the various challenges that students face, right? So they can categorize it into matter of accessibility and affordability, flexibility, learning pedagogy, and so on and so forth. In some of them are relevant to Singapore. In Singapore context, some of them are not, right? So, for example, accessibility and affordability. Generally, our students in Singapore are able to access and afford the necessary devices that require for them to help. Even if they are not able to, uh, the government actually make sure the school and government actually work together to make sure that these students are able to afford and access the material. However, because of the timeline, suddenly everything just goes really fast. We have not really thought much about the pedagogy, a suitable pedagogy to conduct the lesson. Essentially, what we did is just to convert what we are supposed to teach in class into online lesson. And there has been this study by Sintema that academic performance of the students tend to drop during this period, and this was it home-based learning also have economic, social, and psychological repercussion for the life of student. Because when the students are essentially study from home, the parents are also working from home, and they have to share the same space. Conflict tend to happen, and that sort of affect learning and experience. So with that all in mind, I started this study. First of all, I want to know what are my own student sentiment and concern toward the long-term home-based learning. And of course, if students have a negative sentiment or they have a concern, I want to know how I can help the students to alleviate this concern. So I conducted a survey. Essentially, I conducted the first survey in April 2020. This before the 1 week before the school start, and 83 of my students actually respond to the survey. Then I devised some strategies to that I thought could help to alleviate, or to address the students' concern. And then to find out whether that strategy worked or not, I conducted the second survey in June 2020, and 74 of my students responded to the survey. The students I was talking about are my own students from different school in Singapore Polytechnic. So they come from the School of Electrical and Electronic Engineering and School of Mechanical and Aeronautical Engineering, as well as students from the Polytechnic Foundation Program. Now, what is common to all these students is that they are all freshmen. So when they're freshmen means they're first year. So what I'm trying to say here is that not only they have to adapt to this new home-based learning experience suddenly. But for this group of students, because they're freshmen, they're first year, they also have to adapt to the polytechnic life. So what I'm trying to say here is that for this group of students, it was actually some sort of double stress from adapting to the new normal. New home-based learning, as well as stress from adapting to the Singapore to the polytechnic life. So that make actually me even, as a lecturer at the time, I was actually made me a bit even more worried about that. So these are the results from the first survey. First question is what describe your sentiment toward long-term home-based learning, and you can see this that I set this question something like Likert scale. So from the more negative sentiment toward a more positive. So you can see that majority of the students fall within the orange and the gray, which is a more negative. So you can see that most of students actually feel a bit feel not apprehensive toward the home-based learning. So then I tried to find out their concern. What make them feel apprehensive? And these are the word cloud which I generated using their response. So generally, these are the few points. So first of all, students feel that some of them may have a non-conducive or distractive learning environment at home, because they may have shared space with their siblings, with their parents, and if they live in the environment which is generally noisy, for example, that of course will affect the study. Students are concerned with technical issue like computer or internet breakdown. Students are concerned with lack of interaction with the lecturer and fellow classmate. This is probably true because, as I said earlier, they are first year student. They're actually looking forward to make new friends when it comes to Polytechnic, but because of this situation, they couldn't do that. Uh, Over here is that student concerned with the difficulty to ask lecturer questions. Uh, Normally, students ask question at the end of the lesson, but they thought that they couldn't do that anymore if the lessons are conducted online. And here are difficulty to understand or follow lecture explanation during the lesson. So again, in the normal context, in the normal circumstances, they will probably just raise the hand if they can't follow my explanation. But they may not may feel they may not be able to do that during the online lesson, and fear of missing out on important information. So this is, so I think, is a valid concern, because normally in the class, I will just tell them either at the beginning or at the end of the class that, hey, for guys, don't forget that you need to submit this and that, or don't forget that we are going to have a test tomorrow, next following week or something like that. But for students are afraid here that they actually miss that information if I just simply verbally mention that in the online lesson. Okay, so with all this concern in mind, I actually I thought of implementing a few strategies. So first of all is that I try to make the lecture to be as much as possible, as lively, as normal as what I normal, what I normally have done in the normal face-to-face class. So there is a link to a YouTube video here, where I actually use these Lego toys to demonstrate some physics concept. Uh, the same Lego toys actually being used for the normal lesson as well, right? Uh, Although now we move into the online lesson, I try not to shortchange them by yeah, and of course incorporate the same thing that I did in the normal lecture. And since it's online, so I might as well just record all the lecture and the tutorial, and I help provide these summaries of the lecture materials, as well as the to-do list and on the deadlines. Okay, this is actually to address those students who just now mentioned that they're afraid of missing something important. In Singapore Polytechnic, we use Microsoft Teams as to facilitate our learning. We actually have Microsoft Teams as well as a Blackboard as a learning management system, but I decided that, to avoid students, if I put some materials in Blackboard but not in Microsoft Teams or vice versa, then they may, get confused, right? So what happens is that I just basically copy over whatever I have my material in my Blackboard LMS into Microsoft Team, and I use Microsoft Team as a one-stop learning environment, one-stop learning management system for me to disseminate information and also for students to submit their work. So everything is all done on Microsoft Teams essentially. And then I set up a class chat group on WhatsApp to make sure that everybody, if I need to announce information, everybody will get. Okay, so I'm not sure about other polytechnic or in other institution, but normally in Singapore Polytechnic, every time we start a class, we also have start the semester. We form a chat group with the students at the beginning of the semester. So with those implementation in I put them. So what happens is I did a survey just now in April 2020, and then from April until June, I went through the class. I implemented those strategies, and then in the beginning of June, we have a common online test for the students. I mean, that's our end of term test. Then after the test, I conducted the second survey. So the picture on the left, this is the exact pie charts that shown in the first survey. Now, what I want to show next is the second pie chart that come from the second survey, which you can see here that the students are now more positive. You can see that although generally the orange and the gray still dominate the chart, but I can see that we can see here that the blue here now actually occupy a bigger space here, meaning that there are more students who are feeling more confident, moving from, shift from the more negative to a more positive sentiment as far as this home-based learning is concerned. So I then asked what are the possible reason for the shift in the sentiment, and they mentioned here that the lecture video, the recording actually have really helped in terms of, students are able to review, so they are or catch up with what they missed earlier. With all the WhatsApp chat group, the Microsoft Teams, my assurance to them that you can always come, contact me. That I make a note. Also, I promise students that whatever question they ask me, I will try to reply to them within 24 hours. And I try to make the lecture as the online lecture as lively as the so-called face-to-face lecture. So they actually find that I was approachable, and the earlier concern about, not being able to approach the lecturer, couldn't understand the lecture explanation. Those has been debunked. Essentially, they find that my lecture explanation are clear, and in my case, students actually did better in this end of term test compared to the previous year when it was done face to face. So I think students also took this as a sign that they're actually coping well with the home-based learning. So I will almost come to almost the end. So I just conclude a few points here from this project. Okay, first of all is that I was glad that the strategy that I thought actually helped to have managed to alleviate student concern. In fact, help them shift their sentiment from a more negative to a more positive. And I think we all agree about the importance of technology in facilitating the home-based learning. But I want to emphasize here that the keyword is the facilitating. Technology help in facilitate the home-based learning. But what eventually make home-based learning during COVID-19 pandemic a success is, in my opinion, is the care and concern that we provide for each other. There was one time I was conducting the lesson, and I happened to have a baby at home, and my baby at that time only me and my baby. After I put down my baby to bed, then I started the lesson. But halfway through, my baby woke up and started crying. So what happens that I was getting a bit panicky. I told the student, "Can you guys wait for a while? I carry my baby into the carrier." Then I was continuing teaching while carrying my baby. And what touched me a lot, really a lot, is that when the baby was crying, when I was trying struggle to calm my baby down, some students actually turned on their camera and they actually try to distract my baby, and and it actually worked. So as I think it worked both way. I mean, we show our care and concern to the students. In return, the students also share care and concern to the staff, and at the end of the whole home-based learning experience, we walk out of it feeling that, yeah, we have achieved something. I mean, this is something that is a fit that has not been done before, and I think generally we have a positive experience out of it. And as it's not because, and this positive is not because, oh, the technology work, or not because of the so-called the technological advancement, but because of the kind of concern that we show to each other. So with that in mind, this is just the references I showed earlier. So with that in mind, I would like to thank you for your kind attention. Looking forward to your uh, questions, if any. Thank you so much. Bye bye.